only on MSNBC. Plus, deadline Iraq, President Bush laying it on the table at the UN next week. Disarm Saddam by force if necessary, while Saddam faces a deadline from the head inspector. We have a team of correspondents covering the very latest on the showdown. Ron Allen is in Iraq's capital, Baghdad, and Rosalind Jordan in Washington, D.C. And up in Rhode Island, 10 more victims of the deadly nightclub fire identified today. We are expecting another update on this horrible tragedy any minute now as it happens. We will carry it live right here on MSNBC, NBC News on Cable 24/7. Welcome to MSNBC. I'm Natalie Morales, and again, we are waiting for that live press conference to happen at Hasbro Hospital in Providence. We'll bring that to you as soon as it begins. First, though, let's get the very latest on the nightclub fire. NBC's Carl Quintanilla is in Cranston, Rhode Island, with the latest.
At his press conference this afternoon, Governor Carcieri of Rhode Island saying not only are there those additional identifications, bringing the number to 31, but that by tomorrow night, state officials expect medical examiners to have examined all of the 96 bodies, a sign that the state's investigation and the process of identifying those bodies is gaining traction.
We're going 24 hours a day. They went through the night. We've got a mobile unit that is here. That is on standby if we need to activate that. And so we've got the resources going full tilt right now to do this as expeditiously as we can.
Much of the identification is being done with dental records, but at a nearby hotel, family members are bringing loved ones' personal effects, things like hairbrushes and toothbrushes, in case DNA testing will be needed to identify the bodies of their family members. Meanwhile, the governor raising a couple of issues about people who may have been in the club and not remembered it. He asked people to, if they have taken someone into their home, to call the state, especially if that person is disoriented. He did point out finally that the state has retained at least a few samples of the soundproof insulation that lined the interior walls of the club. Not sure yet whether or not that material was flammable or flame retardant, but clearly that'll be a crux of the investigation into what caused the blaze here in West Warwick. Back to you.
NBC's Carl Quintanilla in Cranston, Rhode Island. Earlier today, my colleague Alex Witt spoke to a fire expert. Glenn Corbett is a professor of fire sciences at John Jay College in Manhattan, also a technical editor for Fire Engineering magazine. She asked him about the fire exits at that Rhode Island nightclub.
Well, we have to remember that the fire was located up near the band, and apparently some of the band members may have made it out that exit door adjacent to the stage. But in most cases, most people would have been moving toward the main entrance the way they came in. You'll notice that other exit isn't particularly obvious, you know, in terms of the floor layout and stuff. So most people probably went back the way they went in. And as a matter of fact, most building codes actually call for the main entrance to be actually wide enough to handle half the occupant load of the building because of that specific reason.
You know, let's talk also, Glenn, about the occupant load. I mean, there were a number of people just packed into this building. It has low ceilings and the like. How do you decide how many people can be inside a building safely?
Well, basically, it's a calculation that's in the building and fire codes. Basically, depending upon the type of use, they'll assess so many square feet per person. So, for example, in a dance floor, it may be somewhere around 7 square feet per person. In some of the bar areas or the seating areas, where they would have food and things like that, might be about 15 square foot per person. So, what you do basically is add up the numbers based on the square footage, and then that will be your occupant load, and that would typically be posted near the main entrance.
All right, that's posted, but do people bother to check the numbers of people going in, or is it all about the almighty dollar? The more people you bring in, the more you're going to get in revenue from ticket sales and drink sales, in this case, in a nightclub.
Well, certainly it's up to the building owner to verify that that the occupant load is not being exceeded. Most clubs that are doing things properly will have a counter actually at the front door, counting people as they go in and go out to make sure that they don't exceed the occupant loads.
All right, but Glenn, is there anybody who's responsible for checking that? I mean, fire marshals, they're the ones who come in and do spot checks and that sort of thing, or are there others?
Well, certainly the fire marshals may be there for particular events and things like that. In jurisdictions I've worked for before, we have had people actually working in these facilities to make sure that as a second check to make sure that, in fact, the occupant load limits were being met.
That was Fire Sciences Professor Glenn Corbett giving us his expert opinion on the nightclub fire. That brings us, though, to our question of the day. In light of the recent nightclub tragedy in Rhode Island, should fireworks be banned from indoor events? Send your emails to question@msnbc.com. We'll be reading them throughout the afternoon. Well, now to North Carolina, where MSNBC has exclusive new details from the attorney for Jessica Santillan's family. NBC's Donna Gregory joins us live with this breaking news. Donna, what do you got?
Natalie, malpractice attorney Kurt Dixon has told MSNBC he has started legal preparations toward a malpractice lawsuit in Jessica's death that happened yesterday. A primary focus, he tells us, will be an autopsy on Jessica's body. Now, we're not sure when that autopsy has been scheduled, but he did tell us that the family was unable to donate any of Jessica's possibly salvageable organs because of that pending autopsy. Now, parents of Jessica met with the Mexican consul here in North Carolina today. His name is Senor Armando Ortiz Rocha, and he told MSNBC he believes Duke Hospital took an extremely insensitive action when doctors disconnected life support yesterday around 5 o'clock. He said after speaking with the Santillans, he believes they did not authorize the disconnection, and in his words, it was against their explicit will and wishes for Duke Hospital to do that. But keep in mind, Duke Hospital has claimed that the Santillan family did authorize that disconnection. Jessica was declared brain dead around 1:30 yesterday afternoon. Doctors gave her family time to say goodbye. Her doctor, James Jaggers, released a prepared statement in which he did accept the blame for Jessica's death. He said he took responsibility for the entire surgical team. He did say the hospital stood behind the care that Jessica received immediately after the first transplant, when it was discovered that the blood type did not the donor organs did not match Jessica's blood type. Meanwhile, the community is mourning the death of this 17-year-old, frail, 80-pound child. They're holding a memorial mass for her in her adopted hometown of Lewisburg, North Carolina, around 4 o'clock. That mass will be said in her native language of Spanish. Also, we understand there will be a 6:30 p.m. vigil here behind me outside Duke Hospital, sponsored by the Association of Mexicans in North Carolina. And Natalie, one final note, it's still unclear where Jessica will be buried, but the consul did tell MSNBC News Jessica's family in Mexico is making preparations to receive her body.
And Donna, what about the family today? We know that they are not wanting to speak to the press at this time, but where are they?
The family, we are told by their attorney, has returned home. We're not sure, but it is an educated guess that they may attend the memorial service for her at 4 o'clock this afternoon. The family is in seclusion. They're obviously devastated over the last 2 weeks. They've had to say goodbye to their daughter.
All right, Donna Gregory, live for us from Durham, North Carolina. Appreciate the update and the breaking story there. Thanks so much. Well, Jessica's story certainly raises both legal and ethical questions about malpractice, organ donation, and the treatment patients and their families get from hospitals. Joining us now from Houston is Dr. Matthias Luby. He's an